Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you, the DU Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jennings. Joining me today is our awesome host, Katie Burke, who does our historical shows. Katie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
And Dr. Mike Brazier. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Chris. Good to see you.
Good to see you. All right, so today's episode is our Season 5 wrap-up show. So we are wrapping up the entire season in this short little show, just kind of give you a little recap of what we did, what some of our favorite episodes were, some of the things that we all recommend that you should check out, and what we're going to be doing in Season 6 and beyond. So, Mike, I'll let you go ahead and start. Let's talk a little bit about, some of the things that you did this season as far as the podcast that you think listeners should really, really kind of look for and pay attention, even going into the off season. Maybe there's some podcasts that people missed. What should they go back and listen to?
This is the third year, I guess, that we've done this, and so every time we add something new, try new ideas. And as we've said on previous episodes, we welcome feedback from our listeners. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. But this year we tried a few different things, a few new things on the episodes that you and I do, Chris. And Katie, you certainly did brought a lot of new ideas and new episodes to the lineup as well. But some of the ones that we found, it might have even been your idea, Chris, early on to do some species profiles. Mm-hmm. We released a few of those earlier this year. Those were really popular, and so we're going to continue to do those going forward, add a few species every season, every kind of fall and winter season. We'll bring in some experts to help with some of those species as we go through time. The fact or fiction episodes that we started to do, that was sort of that was an experiment, you might say, but I've heard good reports from those, and that's another one of those kind of themes of episodes where we welcome input from the listeners. Those turned out to be pretty fun, but yeah, input from the listeners on what they want to hear about in that regard on those episodes going forward would be useful. And then, of course, the other thing that we did, now that we have our new producer, Chris Isaac, who is able to dedicate more time to some of the production of what we do than, let's say, we've had in the prior seasons, was the holiday shows, the holiday extravaganza. Mm-hmm. We did one for Thanksgiving. We did one for Christmas. Those were fun. Those were another experiment for us. So this was a year in my mind, as I look back, where we tried a lot of different things. I've heard good feedback from the people on all of those different episodes. So my anticipation is that we'll continue those and may add some more different types of episodes going forward. Katie, I know you brought some expertise and brought some episodes that we didn't have before, that we weren't really able to. I wasn't knowledgeable enough to do, Chris. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much of that is your forte, but the interacting with the art, the collectibles, the history of what is Ducks Unlimited and everything in waterfowl management. And so those were really popular. What did you take away from those in terms of feedback you received and kind of how you thought those went?
So my first reaction is to say, one thing I've noticed just by being both in the Ducks Limited world and in this history side, this collectible side, is they don't necessarily always come together. So it was really nice to be able to bring those two audiences together in one place so that they both would go over to your episodes or back and forth. So we kind of joined those worlds a little bit, which was really nice. And then some of these guys just don't get enough attention. So it was really nice to hear their story. I mean, just did Cameron McIntyre, who's fascinating. And, it's hard to say because it's really just fun for me. I enjoy it, so I don't know. I hope everyone else enjoys it, but I have a great time doing it too.
It's a part of the waterfowl management, I guess, ethos that the people that are really in tune with that know where all the information is. They know all the people, but like you said, there are probably a lot of casual folks that are waterfowl hunters or waterfowl supporters that don't understand the depth of the history in whether we're talking about decoy carving, duck call collecting. I had no idea about how about the obsession of duck call collecting that goes on out there, and I think it's pretty neat for us to be able to use this platform to give greater exposure to those aspects of the waterfowl conservation community and history. And it's one of the things that I've noticed kind of walking around at, we could do a lot of antique stores, my wife and I do, and if you pay attention, waterfowl, birds of all sorts are ever present in a lot of those antique paintings, pictures, figurines.
Oh, yeah.
Birds, waterfowl have just had are rich in the history of really America, North America.
Well, it's truly an American history. Like duck hunting, decoy carving, it's a true American thing. Like it really wasn't done anywhere else as it was here, especially duck calls. And also, like to say, those two things, like I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, and it still blows my mind that there are no carvers or duck call makers really historically from that area. So I grew up in Ducks Limited hunting as a kid, and I knew nothing about this until 8 years ago, and I've learned all this. So it's very interesting because it really depends on where you grew up as well. I mean, if you grew up hunting on the East Coast, you probably are just in tune with it. But considering you're from Arkansas or Mississippi or Louisiana, maybe not. So it just really depends, especially if you're in the Central Flyaway. They just don't have it's not as prevalent there.
I thought it was pretty neat to be able to use this platform to help shine a light on some of those aspects of the waterfowl community, waterfowl hunting community. So,
and the fact that crossover, the bridge, is the conservation support.
Oh,
yeah.
And I think that's something that our audience, even though they may not be as familiar with these really, really high-end carvers and, collectors, they can relate to that because they're seeing the prints. They're seeing the decoys, at the events that you can buy. And so it's like that really bridges a gap there, showing the different support from just like even the sale of folk art to support conservation in general. That's a pretty cool story to tell. And I think that this platform allows us to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah. And speaking of like things I'd like to talk about in the future that I haven't really got to is the conservation side of the history of duck camps, like and what role they've played in conservation as well as historically in waterfowling. So, and that's we can go on a whole tangent about that. I think we're coming up on duck camps turning 175 the next few years. So that would be a really interesting thing to start talking about as well.
Yeah.
I actually had a suggestion from one of our directors of development for getting together some representatives of different duck camps in some hunting-rich areas and just sort of having a town hall discussion with them about and maybe integrating some of the podcast aspect of it. He thought that would be a great. he thought that would be a great idea. So anyway, there's a lot of things that we could do, but yeah, that topic, the historical role of duck clubs in waterfowl management it's a story that certainly needs to be told.
Cool. Yeah, I think we'll add that to the list. As far as I'm concerned, every show we did this season was pretty awesome. But I think, I as much as I did like all of them, I think the Thanksgiving show this year was exciting.
Yeah, the favorite thing I ate in a duck
camp.
blind. That was fun.
That was a good one, and I think people should go back and at least listen to that. Even though it is kind of Thanksgiving themed, there's some really good kind of culinary aspects to it that even I enjoyed just talking about. So, but I think the most important part of this show also for our listeners is for us to kind of explain what we're going to be doing moving forward.
Yeah.
And right now we're wrapping up season 5. Exciting time. We really haven't tooted our own horn a whole lot here in saying that we have surpassed well over 1.1 million downloads. I mean, that's exciting. I think our goal was to try and even get close to 1 million this season, and we surpassed that, easily and above and beyond. So that's exciting.
Yeah, thanks to all of our listeners for being the reason for that happening and spread the word.
Thanks for listening to us.
Absolutely. And, and moving forward, as we see these downloads continue to accumulate and really put up this massive number, it's important for us to put together the content that our audience wants. So, what exactly, you don't have to be specific about what you have planned for the fall of next year, or even, going into season 6, which will be our summer season, which is an off season. We're going to do some retriever training, maybe some shotgunning. We've got some 85th anniversary stuff that we're planning on doing. But Mike, what exactly are you looking at doing moving forward with the podcast?
Yeah, so we're going to have several things coming out, some really soon over the next little while. But the first one will be our annual season in review, where we look back on the waterfowl hunting season. That one was really popular last year, where we had Dr. Tom Mormon join us. This year, we're going to have Dr. Heath Hagee in studio with us. He's here local. He has a lot of experience with kind of the southeastern U.S. And so anyway, that's going to be a fun episode. I think you're going to like that whenever we get that out. That will be one of those episodes that we kind of periodically release outside of our seasons. We're going to have a season later on in the summer. Chris, you can talk a little bit about what we're thinking there. But we will still bring periodic updates to people with regard to how habitat conditions on the prairies are shaping up, how the drought in the West is unfolding, or is it continuing? Is it lessening? There's always some kind of information that we can bring to our listeners, and so we'll do that periodically. There's also, of course, everyone looking forward with anticipation that we're going to be able to resume the waterfowl breeding population and habitat survey. So as we learn things about that survey and sort of how the planning and implementation is going, we'll bring periodic updates to people in that regard. So it's a useful platform in that regard, just to kind of give people, waterfowl hunters are always looking forward to next year. So we can kind of help bridge that gap, I guess, through some of the messages that we're bringing. And it's a chance for us to just further share information, expertise on what waterfowl populations are going through and what our habitat conservation efforts are doing to help them. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about near term. Now, longer term, we're already thinking about the fall and winter of next year, and what type of episodes we might develop. Chris, you brought a couple of ideas to me this year for season 5. We weren't able to get to them. One was to just talk about Canada geese. We haven't talked much about geese at all on any of our episodes thus far. We'll try to change that going forward. And whenever we talk about geese, invariably changes in the distributions, winter distributions of geese is going to be a big part of that conversation, but also the expansion of temperate nesting geese, their recovery. There's a lot of success stories to be told there as well. So we're going to try to pull together a few episodes related to the different species of geese. We'll probably also have a few episodes related to the big topic of our waterfowl distributions, our duck distributions during winter changing. What's the evidence like for any of those duck species? We're going to try to pull together some dedicated episodes to that very question. So, and then beyond that, there's the natural list of other shows, species profiles, fact or fiction, the habitat updates. The list gets long pretty quick.
That's going to be exciting. Katie, how about you? Moving forward into the summer season, or the off season, I guess I should say, but also the fall.
I'm still trying to think about where, for the summer, the history part fits into the theme that we're thinking about. So there will be episodes history related going into that, but to be determined. For the fall, the DU history series was really popular. So we'll definitely continue forward with that with a few more episodes. It'll probably be a little bit different. When we did the first time, we kind of focused on one individual in history. Going forward, that becomes a little bit trickier. So it'll probably be more of multiple individuals, or I've had requests to do the event system, our DU events, and how those got started. So we might kind of pick topics in a different way for the DU history. But there will definitely be DU history episodes going forward. And most likely those will include Dan Teal again.
Cool.
And then continuing on with the same thing, more artists, more carvers, more historians, more collectors. So if you have any ideas.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to, just remind everyone that as we're planning out this content for the summer and throughout the fall, we would really appreciate some feedback from our audience. And you can email us at dupodcast@ducks.org. That is a simple way to reach out to us, to kind of give us an idea if there's something that you want to hear. I think, we've had a couple requests of, just random gear stuff. People want to, our audience is really into the gear stuff, which is good for some of our advertisers.
You don't say. Waterfowlers are gearheads.
Yeah, that's right. So that's exciting for me. That's kind of the things that I look forward to during the summer, even during the off season. We'll tie that into the fall as well. So lots of cool stuff, and I look forward to really kicking it back off. We start that season 6, I should say. We start that in May, and we'll go ahead and kick that off then, and everyone should be prepared for those exciting shows to come.
That'll be good.
Yeah, and please send in requests. We actually take those seriously, and they're helpful to help us come up with ideas. So
absolutely, it's been another year of growth for the podcast. Hopefully, it continues. It's fun to. I think it's a fun way to interact with some of our listeners and some of the suggestions that they do bring, as you said, Katie. So
I'm going to give one more shout out to Chris Isaac.
Yep.
Because we were so much more organized this year. And we actually had...
No slide on clay there.
Yeah,
though, right?
No slide on clay. But he had a lot of other things going on. But yes, this was a much more organized, knew how many episodes I needed to get out situation. So
I
yay,
echo that.
Chris.
Yep.
Good job.
All right,
He's a bit shy. He doesn't want to come on the air just
That's
yet.
right. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Mike, Katie, let's put a wrap on season 5. This has been fantastic. Hats off once again to Chris Isaac. And thank you to all of our listeners for really putting the DU podcast on the map and really, supporting us through the last couple of years. It's been fantastic.
Yep. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do you want me to do a closeout or no? We kind of just closed it out right there.
That's all right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.